Hello and welcome to this lunchtime talk. I'm Lisa Harker, I'm Director of the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory, and today we're talking to Her Honour Judge Carole Burgher, and we're going to be discussing the Family Drug and Alcohol Court, which is widely known as FDAC. Evaluations have found that the Family Drug and Alcohol Court is more successful than ordinary care proceedings in helping parents to reduce substance misuse, enabling more children to return to their parents' care. Judge Burgher was appointed to sit in the Milton Keynes FDAC in 2014 and was subsequently instrumental in creating the Birmingham and Solihull FDAC, which opened in March 2021 as a 2-year pilot. She's the lead FDAC judge at the court. I'm looking forward to asking Judge Burgher about her experience and about what makes the Family Drug and Alcohol Court so successful. But before we begin, I'd just like to say a few words about today's event. There are several hundreds of you attending, and although we can't see you, we'd really like to hear from you. Please use the chat tab to share any comments or questions. We've already received lots of questions. Thank you to all of you who've sent questions in advance. We're going to try and address as many of those as possible, but all of them will be read by the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory team, and that will help to shape future research and events. We are recording today's event, so if you would like to listen to the discussion again, please visit the events section of our website, nuffieldfjo.org.uk. Previous talks from this In Conversation series are also available to watch there. So I'd like to welcome Judge Burgher. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a real pleasure.
Can I start by just asking you what happens in a family drug and alcohol court?
Lisa, can I go back a little bit before then? My background, as you and others who are listening in might know, is as a solicitor. And I spent over 23 years representing children and families before I became a district judge. And I became a district judge in 2014, as you've said, and I was one of the first district judges at the Milton Keynes FDAC. When I was appointed in the May of 2014, I was asked if I would sit in FDAC in the July. I didn't know what FDAC was, and I suspect some of your listeners won't know what it was. But I was lucky enough then to be able to go to the London FDAC, which, as you know, was the first one to open in 2008. And I watched one of the first FDAC judges there, District Judge Ken Grant, on a day. And what I saw there was a list of some 15 cases. And in those cases, some of the parents that came in without lawyers, and some came in with lawyers. Up until that point, the only thing I really knew about FDAC was having listened to a video recording of the former, the late Nick Crichton, who, as you know, was the founder of FDAC and founded the London FDAC in 2008. And I didn't know anything before then, except that when Nick talked about FDAC, he talked about it being a compassionate way, a respectful way of doing care proceedings. And FDAC is different for a number of reasons. The essential reason is that it's about problem solving, and it's about trying to solve and assist parents in solving those problems which have brought them to the court in respect of their children in the first place. Now that can, in all of our cases here at Birmingham and Solihull, the main focus is substance misuse, but there are other problems that go with substance misuse, mental health issues around sometimes domestic abuse, issues around neglect of children as a result of substance misuse. And what FDAC does is it works very hard at resolving those problems with parents. And I say with parents, not for parents. And I say that because the FDAC is made up of not only me as a judge, but a multidisciplinary team. That means a team where there are experts from different backgrounds. In the Birmingham and Solihull team, we have social workers, we have family support workers, we have a substance misuse worker, we have a clinical psychologist that is the clinical lead, we have a domestic abuse worker, and we have a mental health worker. That's quite a big FDAC. When I started in Milton Keynes, the team was much smaller. But essentially what the team did, and what I saw happening in that London FDAC, was the team had devised, following assessment of parents, a plan of work that parents would work to and do with members of the team and do with other treatment services and other agencies that would help them resolve their problem. And after 23 years of doing family work, what was the surprise to me was the extent of that plan. We call them intervention plans, and the extent of the actions that were taken by those professionals to assist parents in resolving their difficulties and their problems. And one of the other key elements of FDAC, which is very different to what I do ordinarily, is that I see parents every 2 weeks. So when I went to that London FDAC, some of those parents that were there without their lawyers were there because they were there for what we call a non-lawyer review. And that means that as part of the process of FDAC, parents, as they work through that plan, come and see the judge every 2 weeks, and they talk to me, and they talk to other FDAC judges up and down the country now about their experience of the plan, about the challenges of it, about things that may have meant they haven't achieved as much as they would want to in terms of where they are in the plan and where they are in terms of the changes that they want to make. And my job is about motivating them at that stage and keeping them on track and encouraging them and reminding them that what they're doing is really hard work, that nobody expects miracles from them, but that they can do it. And I know they can do it because I have had the experience of seeing lots of parents now since 2014 who have done it in circumstances where if I had worked purely from reading the papers, I would have questioned whether that was possible.
So as you say, there's some really key elements there. You mentioned the extensive support that the parents have and the design of a package of support that they need, but also this different relationship that you have as a judge with the parents, both in terms of the continuity of contact that you have, but also just the interaction. How is it different, the interaction with a parent in an FDAC court from a typical court?
Well, the continuity of contact, as you will know, that as family judges, we always try to retain continuity. That becomes more and more difficult with the volume of cases we have. But within FDAC, we're absolute about this, that I will see once those parents have signed up and agreed to the process, and they have to agree, that I will see them every fortnight. And they come in for about 20 minutes or half an hour. And what's different about that is actually the process gives them the opportunity to speak, to talk about their children in ways that lawyer hearings in the traditional sense doesn't often give them. One of the things, I've been looking at some of the feedback from parents, and I do this periodically, and from other professionals and children, if children have written about the process. I look at the feedback at the end of cases. And one of the things that parents say really quite frequently in that feedback is, I was scared. I was scared about going to court for the first time. I was scared about meeting the judge. I was scared about meeting the judge on my own. But, and there's always a but that by the time they had adjusted to the process, they realized they didn't need to be scared. And that's the relationship that we build with parents. I mean, some would say, well, it looks quite informal, and that's on purpose, because what I want is I want parents to feel comfortable to talk to me. I will try all sorts of techniques. There will be parents that don't speak very often at the beginning. I encourage parents, if they're able to write things down that they want to tell me, or they'll come in with a folder of the work they're doing with the FDAC team, and I will ask them, is there anything they want me to read in their folder? If they're parents that may struggle with reading and writing, then I just encourage them to slowly talk to me about, and we may not talk initially about the proceedings, but what we do talk about all the time is their children. And generally speaking, that's a really good way of opening up discussion, talking about their children, talking about what contact might have been like more recently, and raising issues that they feel more comfortable with. And one of the privileges I have as an FDAC judge is to see the growth of parents. And by that, what I mean is I have parents who will come into my courtroom the very first time with heads down, looking really quite low about the process and worried. And yet by the end of it, are coming in, almost skipping in, some of them, and talking to me quite openly about how they feel. And that's including parents who may not, in the traditional sense, be considered successful in that they don't get the return of their children. But what they've developed through the process is a confidence and a trust in it, that they feel able to contribute, and they will. And what we also see, Lisa, and what I see frequently, is that confidence transfers then back into the lawyer hearings. So in a lawyer hearing, I will ask a question, and the lawyer for a parent might think they're to answer it, but before they've even opened their mouths, the parent is answering it for me. And that to me is a testament of the kind of confidence that it builds, and honesty and openness that it builds, because those are important factors.
You mentioned that the parents who are coming into your FDAC have substance misuse problems, but also other problems. What is your sense of which kind of cases really work in an FDAC situation and which ones might not work?
Well, look, the research tells us that cases that have substance misuse as at the heart of them definitely do work. The research also tells us that having the multidisciplinary team, having a team where you've got experts who can look at issues like the relationship difficulties that there may be, domestic abuse that there may be, who can look at mental health issues and trauma, which is at the base of many of the cases that we see, tells us that they work well. And they work well because of the expanse of the team and the expertise of the team. But one of the things I can't sit here and say is that I understand what other care proceedings may respond as well to that problem-solving approach. And I think that is part of the existing debate that we're having within family law now through the Public Law Working Group, looking at how we engage parents differently and young people and so in proceedings, and looking at whether problem-solving more widely can impact other sets of public law proceedings.
So is your sense that some of the factors that are really essential to a successful FDAC could be adopted more widely in care proceedings or even in private law proceedings?
Well, I certainly think solvable problems, if I put it like that, might be amenable to some of the way we do FDAC. I certainly think one of the things I did, and this you might find unusual, when I was thinking about setting up the FDAC here, one of the things, very basic things that I did was I used to come in early or leave later and wander around the building just to determine which was the right courtroom for an FDAC to run from. And part of that process was just adjusting the thinking to what physically will make parents more comfortable when they're coming into that courtroom and talking to me about some of the most personal things to them, not least their children, and talking to me directly. So we went for courtrooms where the judge isn't raised, where we're on the same level. I couldn't quite get the horseshoe that I know London had set up with, but I got courtrooms where we're on the same level, where parents come in, where they feel comfortable. And audits and observers who've come into our FDAC have noted from the very beginning how that impacts on parents' ability to engage in the process. The other thing I would say, Lisa, is I spent a lot of time, I mean, we launched this FDAC in the middle of a pandemic, and that was a real challenge for everybody involved. I'm so grateful to everyone for pursuing it. But I spent a lot of time talking to professionals who are supporting the court, so court staff. I did training for court staff, those in the back room who we don't see every day. We did training for the clerks, for the ushers, for all of the professionals that will use the court, guardians, social workers, and lawyers. And part of that was about trying to adjust culture, I guess, and thinking, and helping people understand where their roles were and how we make this process as easy as we can for the parents involved.
Let me ask you a bit about children in this process, because you know, you mentioned it's really important for parents to start talking about their children, but children, this is about children themselves. Exactly. Where do children have a voice and a say in this process?
Well, firstly, what I would say is I often hear the phrase, well, FDAC is all about parents. And what I say to that is the focus is on parents, but children are at the centre. And one of the things I do think it's important I emphasise is firstly that the children's timetable drives FDAC. I often hear, and this was one of the things I heard a lot of from lawyers in particular, well, FDAC is one of those cases. That means that we've got lots of time. And I always retort, no. Although we know through case law that FDAC might be one of those circumstances where it's necessary to extend the time, we are driven still by the child's timetable and how that matches up with the timetable of their parent. One of the other things we've managed to do, a lot of the cases I see involve babies and very young children. And where we have older children, we've actually learnt quite a lot from an audit that was done by the Family Justice Young People's Board and one of our other local young people's services of us. And both of those organisations sent some young people to audit the FDAC and to look at it from the minute. In fact, I think it was from leaving where the FDAC team work to coming to court. So they understood the experiences that parents in the process would have. And those young people firstly fed back about, and they were very positive about what they saw and their meeting with the judges, but they fed back information which has been really important about the information that we give to young people, how we keep them involved in the process, how they're helped periodically with the guardians' help and the social workers' help and the team's help to understand what their parents are doing. And it goes without saying, Lisa, that as a family judge, if at any point those young people want to see the judge and talk to the judge about their wishes and about their feelings, then space is made for that to happen. I should say as well, by the way, that as a solicitor, I came to family law having been mentored by the person who wrote the book, The Child as Client, that accompanied the Children Act. So I'm acutely aware about the voices that children and young people and teenagers and young people who are able to express how they are feeling and what they want need to be involved in the process. And that was one of the reasons why we didn't hesitate when we were asked if there could be a review of our court.
Now, some judges and possibly some lawyers are not enthusiasts for FDAC or a bit reluctant to get involved in FDAC. Why do you think that is?
Well, you know, I hear that, Lisa. One of the things I would say first is that I've worked in 2 FDAC courts now and been part of 2 larger courts in terms of the family court. And I've never met a judge that is reluctant to be either involved in or supportive of FDAC. So I'm not sure I necessarily agree. What I do say, though, is being an FDAC judge requires a certain style and approach, and I can understand if some of my colleagues don't feel that they are the right people to do that work. But what I would say is, even if they are not, judges are incredibly supportive of the process. And you only have to look at what the president says about FDAC, that he would like to see FDACs up and down England and Wales, and he would like every authority to have access to an FDAC to know that that's the case.
And obviously you can't speak for the whole of the family justice system, but
No.
In terms of taking FDACs forward and rolling them out across the country, do you see, for example, magistrates getting involved in FDACs in future?
I can't speak for, as you say, the whole system. What I can say is I think one of the essential factors that makes the process work is that relationship that is built with a consistent judge. And so we've talked about this as an issue. And I would, one of the issues I think is that magistrates don't tend to sit alone, and they may not have the scope to do the work in the way that it requires with the fortnightly one-to-one non-lawyer reviews with parents.
I can see on the chat people are also asking what do I do if there's not an FDAC in my area? Now, you've had experience of really championing an FDAC. What was the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you manage to get an FDAC off the ground?
Look, the biggest challenge that all of us family judges faced in the last few years has been, as you know, the impact of COVID. That was enormous. But as I say, I'm really grateful because we didn't give up. But one of the other challenges I would say, and I think this is really significant, is FDAC is a collaboration. And it isn't just about the team, and it isn't just about the judge. I've already talked about the wider court staff and their support. But it's about CAFCAS, it's about the police, it's about housing, it's about treatment services and health. And probably the biggest challenge is being able to pull all of that together and get everybody on the same page and talking about the same things. And particularly in an area like Birmingham and Solihull, where we were very lucky is that we have Birmingham Children's Trust and Solihull, and they were so positive about doing this and doing the process in accordance with what we know works. And so we were able to, through them, have a strategic lead, somebody that took responsibility for championing the FDAC and helping to pull all of those resources together. And with that person and with a really, really good team manager and FDAC team, we have managed to do it. We're not there yet. We're still a pilot. I don't think I've said that. And the pilot doesn't come to an end until next year. But I think that is probably the biggest thing, is getting FDAC on the agenda, talking about it, getting other like-minded professionals across all the spectrums to talk about it and to work with the relevant local authorities to look at how feasible it is.
And you've talked about the support that parents have being very multidisciplinary and bespoke to their needs. How different is that from the support you think parents are getting when they are coming into normal care proceedings?
I think the difference is it's the team. I mean, there's a vast difference. It's not that parents come in not having had support, because often we read reports that they have and that they have been signposted to organisations that will assist them, and that social workers have tried to do really good work. But it's the perception, which is real, that the team is independent. That's very important. And it's the expertise of that team at pulling together intervention plans that really do go to the heart of the issues that affect a particular parent and family and child. And pulling that together in one place, and then being able to harness the support from those agencies that are going to pick up and work with parents beyond any FDAC and any court proceedings. And that is really quite significant. And that is, I believe, different.
And I can see in the chat people are asking, you know, is this a specialist team that's different, just dedicated to FDAC, or are these workers who are working with families in other services?
These are a team of professionals dedicated to FDAC. That's what they do day in, day out, and that's what makes their assessments and the work and the conclusions that they bring so sound. There is another issue. You asked about challenge. Challenge for everybody is the cost. What I say on that is the Centre for Justice Innovation has just done a review of the cost benefits analysis of FDAC. The previous president, the current president, has always said, as the research tells us, that FDAC is cheaper in so many respects than standard proceedings. But for me, the benefit is the outcomes for children. The fact that we are not seeing those parents come back into the system time and time again, and having more children that they then go on to lose to permanency as a result of not having the work that could be done with them to resolve matters. And I don't think there's a measure of cost you can put on that. But the reality on the ground, and I am a realist, is that for local authorities, the cost savings are immense, not just in terms of that pattern of behaviour being broken and that change being brought about, but also in terms of the fact that we see virtually no contested hearings at either an interim or final stage. We do not need experts, additional experts, as a result of the work that the team is doing. And there are so many ancillary costs of that nature that are saved.
Indeed. Finally, before we have to wrap up, I wanted to ask you a slightly different question. You're a leading judge and a Black woman in a profession that's sometimes criticised for its lack of ethnic diversity. At the FJO, we've recently highlighted the disproportionate number of Black children on care and supervision orders. Do you think the court, judges and advocates have an understanding of the journey of Black and other minority ethnic children who are coming into care proceedings?
Well, again, can't speak for everybody. What I can say, just on the issue of being a Black judge, things are changing, and they have changed in the 30 odd years that by the very fact I'm here as a Black judge. And I can also say that those issues are issues which are very sensitive to every family judge that I know. And if you're asking me in terms of change into a young person, for example, said to me not very long ago, "Judge, I'm really pleased you're my judge because you're a Black woman. You will understand my experience in a different way." Now, this was a teenager who said that. She said, "You're a Black judge." So I think there are changes that we have still got to make. And some of those changes are quite urgent. But I am confident, and I say this, that there are voices that are making the case for that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you to everyone who's attended today. If you'd like to find out more about the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory's work, please visit our website, nuffieldfjo.org.uk. And if you want to be kept informed of upcoming research and events that we're running, please sign up to our regular bulletins at nuffieldfjo.org.uk/subscribe. Before we finish, we'd be very grateful if you could fill in the event feedback form, because we read those very seriously, and we look forward to welcoming you to future events. Thank you all very much.
Lisa, thank you, and thank you to everybody that listened in and watched. Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.